All right, what a treat here, ladies and gentlemen, here on In the Circle. Eric Lopez with you, joined by two pretty good, great former players now turned broadcasters who also do a lot of other stuff in their real lives and making big contributions. Of course, we know our good friend, two-time All-American, Pac-12 Network, and ESPN, doing some ESPN analyst work, Kenzie Fowler. We're going to be seeing her real soon, which we'll talk about momentarily. But we're also joined for the first time by another Fowler. We're double dipping on Fowlers, doubling up here, a double header, if you will. Mattie Fowler, former Big Ten performer, all active, first four-time captain at Nebraska, who works in some behind the scenes at Nebraska with some pretty cool projects, not just softball, but other sports that we'll talk about. And now a radio analyst at Nebraska alongside Nate Rohr for select, I believe, home games. Mattie Fowler joining us. Ladies, welcome. This is historic. I think this is the first sisters act we've had on the show.
Ooh, I like that.
That's cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
There's a lot of good sisters out there in softball too, so I like that.
Now, Kenzie, you're getting ready for work of the three of us. You're the one of the three of us going to be having on-air role coming up. So tell us a little bit first, because you got a couple of assignments coming up here with ESPN.
I know this is usually the time where we're just kind of sitting around enjoying vacation. So I don't know when this is going to come out, but getting ready to be part of the big ESPN slate on Friday. I think there's 6 games. We're covering the Little League regionals, and so I'm really excited to be a part of that. I'll be in the Central Regional in Whitestown, Indiana, and looking at the bracket, not sure who we're going to see, but there's still a lot of games to be played here in the next couple of days. And then after that, we'll be flying to Chicago. So kind of similar states, couple states over, and working with Athletes Unlimited. But one thing at a time here, starting with Little League and then going to Athletes Unlimited later.
So you're going to be on the broadcast call for the Central Region on the Little League softball, and then going and then broadcast the Athletes Unlimited up in Rosemont, there in Chicago, Illinois. There, if only you knew somebody in the Midwest over there that kind of knows that Big Ten area.
Swing by Nebraska.
Yeah,
I know she was saying that earlier. She was like, the flights are really cheap from like Chicago to Nebraska, and I was like, I do like to visit my nephew, so maybe.
Yeah, it's not about me anymore. I'm old news.
No, it's about the nephew. That's the key factor there.
Very clear.
Let me ask you this, Mattie. What's it like when you see Kenzie on television, whether it be Pac-12, ESPN, what she's doing now? I mean, her expanded portfolio, if you will. What goes through your mind when you see her?
It's super fun, and I don't think anyone breaks down pitching as well as she does, and that's always fun for me to hear. And if not, she'd be just calling me and giving me the play-by-play. So I'm glad there's a bigger audience rather than just being on a FaceTime with us, where she'd get too antsy and she'd always have to talk to somebody. That or her husband. Her husband's probably very relieved because he's not having to just listen to it all the time. So it's something I think she was really born to do. Our parents they coached both of us, and so we used to go to tournaments, and then we'd drive 6 hours home from California, and all we did the whole ride home was just break down play after play after play. So we kind of grew up doing that, and it's kind of fun that she gets to do it for a living now.
Now, you're both actually nominated for Golden Mike Awards. Kenzie for National Analyst of the Broadcaster of the Year. Mattie, you're nominated for the first time this year. Kenzie was a nominee last year. You're nominated, part of the Nebraska radio broadcast, which was nominated for Best Radio Broadcast alongside Nate Rohr. And you were nominated on the Radio Personality category there. So I don't know, is there any competition internally here? You're both getting nominees here. We don't know when this comes out as far as when we find out who wins or doesn't win, etc. But both of you get acknowledged for your work.
It's fun. I mean, it's I'm really proud to be nominated with Nate. I think Nebraska softball has done radio for a really long time. I think they've done it a lot longer than a lot of programs have and have been committed. I mean, Nate Rohr's in his 18th or 19th season, which I think speaks for itself. So it's something that's really important to Coach Rebel, that she's always prioritized, with her budget and everything, to make sure that it's on the airwaves. So that makes me really proud, because radio is kind of an art, and you do it too, Eric, but I don't know that everyone always appreciates it or thinks of it first. So I think that's what's kind of cool for me is I love to be in the booth with Nate. Sometimes I think he forgets I'm there. I'm just kidding. Nate will probably listen to this. But man, that dude can run. He just goes. But he's just nobody's better. I mean, he loves the game so much. He loves Nebraska softball. He'll just, I'll mention something and he'll be like, well, actually back in 2002, and he knows right off the top of his head, that fun fact. So it's just really cool to be nominated with Nate because he's been doing it. He has such a passion for Nebraska softball.
How'd you get involved on the radio side? 'Cause you work at Nebraska, for those that know. We'll get into that a little bit as well. But what got you into the radio side, and were you influenced by a certain someone in the broadcast field?
Yeah, I've always been at games because I'm around. Like you said, I work in the athletic department, and I don't do road games because it would be a lot to manage with my job, but do home games. But we brought our radio production in-house. And so when they were kind of shuffling that around, they were trying to bring in just some different, analysts alongside the main people. So one of the guys who was overseeing it, he was like, hey, would you be interested in doing some games? And I was like, if Nate will have me, he's the boss, it's his call. And Nate was very gracious, and we have a lot of fun.
What was that like working with Nate as far as his preparation? He knows the program inside out. Was that to take some time to get used to each other, or was it because you knew him already? Was that an easy transition?
Super easy transition because we know each other so well. I mean, I played 5 years and I've always been close to the program. But what was funny is, I mean, he's more prepared than anyone. So I showed up to my first broadcast and I had like a printed out, score sheet. I didn't even have a book. And here he is. He's got 18 colored pens and note cards and 15 things taped up on the wall. And I was like, I feel like I'm missing some stuff. I'll never be as prepared as him. I'm like, I'm just here to react more, I think, Nate. But it was just so funny because I was like, do I need more pens? I don't know what I need to bring. I was texting Kenzie. I was like, what score sheet do I need? Mine doesn't feel right.
Kenzie was shaking her head during your answer there. So I want Kenzie to respond there, because give me your perspective as you found out she was going to do radio, and I know you've listened to them. So just give me from your point of view.
Well, I'm laughing because I remember very well. She's texting me like, what do I need? And she's sending me a piece of paper of her score sheet. And you could definitely tell it's just like a Googled like MLB score sheet. And I was like, I will send you mine because I have thoughtfully curated something perfect. So I, sent her mine, and I'm laughing because like I'm also that girl. I'm just like Nate. Like I have 13 different colored pens, like each pitch, each out has a different pen, and I'm very like anal about all of that. And I have my scorebook and I have it a certain way. So I'm laughing because she just kind of rolled into it. And of course, like you're looking at day one versus where she is now and how far she's come. But day one, she was like, I don't know how serious I'm going to start taking this. And she's gotten really good since she started. And of course, there's things that, at the very beginning, I'd kind of point out. I'm like, this is when you're going to talk. I think that was the thing that was hardest for me as an analyst, is like, when do you jump in? And you don't ever want to cut off your play-by-play, but they also want you to speak. And it's just, you have to build up that natural chemistry of having timing. But sometimes when you start, you just don't know like when that timing is supposed to happen, and you sometimes can force it. So I remember having those conversations with her when she started, but I definitely don't have those conversations anymore with her because she's plenty experienced and she's got it going with Nate. They're a really good team and they're fun listen.
I will say what we do have still is Kenzie, like I said, she breaks down pitching better than anyone. So sometimes when a game's live on TV and we're calling on the radio, I'll be like, Kenzie, what do you see from this pitcher? And she'll just, offhand shoot me something really, really good. And then I'll just eloquently work that into my broadcast. Like I, knew that all along.
Like so a hidden spotter. It's like a hidden spotter there you got.
So I panic if she's not watching sometimes. I'm like, dang it, I don't have a secret weapon tonight. All right, I've got this.
How much feedback did you get from her? Like, did you seek out her feedback? Would she tell you the feedback right away? How would that work?
If you know Kenzie at all, she's never been one who's afraid to give you her feedback. So right away, I mean, there was just some, there's certain, key words and stuff that I would repeat a lot. Or one thing I kept saying was we, and she was like, I know you're part of the team, but you can't be saying we, And I was like, you're right. I am saying we. Okay, good call. So simple critiques, that maybe somebody else would be afraid to tell you, but a sister is never afraid to shoot it straight. So, but feedback I would always want, like, don't let me out here saying the wrong thing. So, it's been fun. And like I said, I'm always texting her. I did one game on TV this year for our local production. And so I'd never done a stand-up before. And I had an interview with the coaches before. So I'm texting her and I'm like, what questions do you like to ask in that interview with the coaches? So it's fun to pick her brain because she's been through it and she's been doing this for how long now? What year was this for you?
Oh, 8 or 9? 8, I think.
Ooh, we're going on a milestone approaching here.
Yeah.
I will have to look this up, but it's something like that. I think 8.
Yeah, we didn't get that answer. That's pretty good. When you listen to Mattie broadcast, are you listening as a sister? Or are you listening as an analyst? How do you balance that?
Sister, I think. I think it's the closest thing, because I've thought about this before. I think it's the closest thing that I will ever get to hearing myself. You know what I mean? Because it's your DNA. It's your foundation. It's the way you think. You heard her talk about earlier, and it's so true. Like, we grew up talking softball, and not just talking like fun things, talking X's and O's and what went wrong in the game, and should we have bunted in this situation? What would have happened if there would have been a ground ball to the right side versus the left side? Because both of our parents were our coaches, so it was a crazy time growing up. And I don't know how my parents did it. We both were multi-sport athletes, first of all. We had our preferences and what we did, but we did everything together, and we were both better at each other at different things. Like, I was the better swimmer. We were both on swim team for such a long time. She was the better volleyball player. We played volleyball all the way through high school. I was better at basketball. She was better at dancing, and we did all those sports. She even played soccer in middle school. So we're doing all of that. And on top of it, our parents are coaching club softball and coaching 2 different teams under the same organization. And my mom coached my sister and my dad coached me. And sometimes we'd be on the road separately. Luckily, sometimes we'd be on the road together, and, we would have a California trip, or we'd go to the Colorado or Utah, whether nationals was somewhere in Illinois, or you name it. You're traveling the country and you're getting that car, and you were just talking about the game, because they were the coaches making the calls and we were the players on the field, and having that feedback and that dialogue. So when I listen to Mattie talk, it's like, yeah, that's what I would have said too. Those are my thoughts too. So that's what's fun for me, because I listen as a sister. It's like, that's my sister. It's my DNA. It's what I think too.
Mattie, what goes through your mind when you watch Kenzie on TV? Are you thinking more as a sister? Are you nervous? Are you more nervous watching her? Or are you more nervous when you're on the air?
I like listening to her, but I'm more taking notes. So I'm like, oh, good point. I like that. I would steal that. I'm like, oh, I liked that transition. So just in my second year of doing it. So I used to just listen to her for fun, and now I'm trying to listen to pick things up so that I can try to improve as well. And like you said, TV and radio is a little bit different, because you're reacting a lot to the replays on TV versus you're having to paint a perfect picture on the radio. So it is a little bit different, but there's nothing I love more than when, she can get a good pitching close up and she can just break it down and run with it. But what's cool about Kenzie too is, she was a really good hitter, and she got to hit a little bit in college, but I don't think to the extent of really how good of a hitter she was. She's really strong and had a ton of power. So she can break down both elements of it. And I think that makes her a really unique broadcaster.
Do you text her when she's on the air? Do you leave her alone when she's on the air?
I text her.
Oh, wow.
The entire time.
Wow.
She's my comedic relief. Yeah, so she'll text me things. That's what I'm talking about. Like those sister thoughts. Like, she'll text me those thoughts and I cannot say them on air. But she's tuned into the game, and so she's giving me like what we would say if I wasn't on TV, or if she wasn't on the radio, if we were just on the couch. So I always she's like my comedic relief during games, because I'm like reading the text and I'm like, okay, gotta keep calling it and not talk about what she just said. But it's
the other thing I always try to sneak in too is anytime the conversation seems to drift towards like family and softball or sisters, I'm like, this is it. talk about me. I just,
Yep.
and I'm like, and then if she doesn't take the bait, I'm like, gosh, I'm here, I'm listening. I just wanted my 3-second shout out, Kenzie. So that's my other
Yep.
thing.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to plead guilty here. Because I watched you both play. I watched Kenzie obviously broadcast a lot. I plead ignorant. I had no clue you two were related. And the reason nobody ever brought you two up together. So I agree with you saying, Mattie. I never knew about it until years later about that. So, and that was that by design that you didn't bring it up? Coincidental? Like, because I generally didn't know you two. I watched you at Nebraska and I didn't think of, oh, she's Kenzie's sister, which maybe is a good thing in a way because people focused on you. But I never heard the two of you related.
Well, I think that goes into like my sister's recruiting decision. She was definitely good enough to play at Arizona and, could have been my teammate. We were teammates in high school and it was pretty fun, but I mean, she can speak to it. But I remember like when she was having to make that decision, she was very firm and like, I want to blaze my own path and I want to, not to shy away from, someone, but she's like, I need to have my own identity and I'm going to go do that. And, so I think that kind of goes all the way back to her recruiting decision.
Yeah, I mean, right? Kenzie was, there's no other way to put it other than Kenzie was the #1 recruit in her class coming out of high school. I mean, by far, back-to-back national Gatorade Player of the Year. And man, we had a blast in high school because we were just on a run, winning games and everything. But, I really liked to pitch when I was growing up, but I could not pitch like her. I was like, man, that's a good rise ball. I can't spin it like that, So for me, it was always like, how can I be the best version of myself, but not try to compete and not try to be her, but try to be the best Mattie. So, it was, I would have loved to play behind her, but for me, it was always, I'd been kind of Kenzie's sister, which I'm very proud to be Kenzie's sister. And that was a very cool experience for me growing up. But yeah, it was an awesome decision for me to go to Nebraska. And I'm still there. And I think that was kind of where I was meant to be.
Why Nebraska? Obviously, you're both from Arizona. Kenzie goes to Arizona. All of that makes a ton of sense. What was it about Nebraska that you chose Nebraska?
Yeah, I think #1's the coaches. I think Coach Ravel, Coach Miller, Coach Sipple, they've been together a long time and 3 of the best personalities. I mean, Coach Ravel officiated my wedding. So I think that says everything about the relationship I have with her. Yeah. And it's not the first wedding she's done. So she's done other teammates of mine's weddings as well. So she's kind of making
she did a phenomenal job. Like she did such a good job. I'm over there like behind Mattie. I'm like wiping my like she did so good. So good. 10 out of 10.
Yeah. So I think you bond with the coaches first. You've got to like your coach because you're with them for 4 or 5 years every single day. So if you're not bonded and clicked with your coach and it's somebody that you're like, I don't know, don't go to that school. That's an easy call. But the other thing is that the support at Nebraska was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I mean, on my recruiting visit, I went to a football game. I stood on the sideline, 90,000 people. Okay, cool. Then they took me to a volleyball game where it was at our smaller stadium. We've now moved to a bigger venue, but it was 4,000 people, standing room only. The whole place shook. It was so loud in there. And the volleyball players would say they could feel the floor vibrate. And I had never seen that kind of atmosphere, for women's sports, like that crazy. And I was hooked. I was like, this is so cool. And everywhere you go, that's kind of how Nebraskans are, is that they love their community, they love their sports, and they're all in. And I wanted to be a part of that. It's kind of addicting.
You two can say you both have played for legendary coaches in this sport. Rhonda Ravel, who is still going, we'll get to her, and obviously you have Nebraska. She's got an exciting year ahead. Kenzie, you played for Mike Condrea. I mean, have you both stopped and thought about that? That even though you both went different directions with your careers, you both played with legendary coaches, and I would imagine there had to have been some communication about that, Mattie, learning and knowing that Kenzie played for Mike, you're playing for Rhonda. I mean, that's kind of wild. Like the odds of that are not like very high. Like, do you both understand how fortunate you both are from that standpoint?
I don't think we've talked about it out loud and like have, you know what I mean? But it's something that, we've just been so blessed to have done that. And it goes into the recruiting. And like you heard Mattie said, there was a reason she went to Nebraska. And of course, a hometown girl, and Coach Condrea calls, it's very hard to say no. And we grew up literally, my sister and I grew up physically in the Hillenbrand stands. My parents purchased their season tickets when Hillenbrand was built in 1992. It was 91, one of those years. I think it was the year after I was born. I was born in 91 and they purchased their season tickets, I think, in 92. Had to take care of, the newborn. But after they purchased their season tickets, my sister comes along and we're literally 4 and 6 years old, maybe even younger. And I think my mom strategically purchased the season tickets that were over the walkway so we would have extra room. So sometimes I would be 6 and my sister's napping on the floor with the blanket and we're watching, Arizona UCLA Friday night at 7 p.m. And that was our childhood. And we rarely missed games, rarely, until we got older and, you're playing on Friday nights and high school comes around and all of that. But the formative years from 4 to 12, we were at every single game and just fell in love with it. So very, very lucky that not only did we play for 2 legendary coaches, but very lucky that we grew up in Tucson at the time that we did. Because if you think of those years, you're telling us that we were watching the 95, the 96, the 97, 98, 99, all the way to Jenny Finch 2002. That's when we were fans. They were good.
I thought I was Jenny Finch. I was number 27 growing up. I did my hair the same way. I completely changed my pitching motion to match hers, which didn't work really well for me. I had to go back to my old motion. But I mean, it was peak era. It was so much fun.
Yeah, Mattie was number 27 for Jenny Finch, and I was number 13 for Nancy Evans. And that's how it went.
Did you both? Was those your favorite players growing up? Did you get to meet them?
Oh yeah. I mean, also some of the players.
I love it. Oh yeah, no big deal. We met them. Yeah, whatever.
Oh yeah. Well, of course, now as an alum, I do camps and we have reunions and stuff. And but I mean, Leah O'Brien was a big favorite of mine. Tony Mascarenas. Of course, Caitlin Lowe. Hello.
Yep, Caitlin, Lovey Jung.
Yeah, Lovey Jung,
autumn champion. Mm-hmm. We went to camp every summer too, and there was this week-long overnight camp that Arizona softball would do, which was our summer camp dream. So it was so cool, and all of the players would be the camp counselors, and I mean, we did that every single summer. So I mean, it was our way of life.
So both of you had to play softball, even though you played a lot of different sports, and it was in your blood. You had to play softball, right? Was it like that?
I was going to say, we're bearing the lead here is that both of our parents were pitchers. And my dad played a little baseball in high school, but grew up in Wilcox, Arizona during the height of the men's fast pitch era. And Wilcox had a phenomenal team. They would travel the country, and my dad pitched men's fast pitch. And my mom pitched in high school, pitched softball. And so I don't know if we're in trouble for telling this story, but so the second date or the first date? Second date?
I think second date.
Second date, it comes up, this is what they say, that, I'm a pitcher. Well, I'm a pitcher. And so they think it's fun to go down to the park and pitch to each other. Apparently my dad threw a rise ball and hit my mom in the head. So, destiny, clearly, soulmates. But I mean, we did play a lot of sports, and I opened up my 3rd grade time capsule a couple years ago, and I had written down that I was going to be a professional basketball player, just to put in perspective what I was doing and where I was. But time goes on, and the way we were raised, and there was no doubts that we were going to play college softball. It was just a matter of where and when.
Yeah, but what's really cool, I think, about our parents, I just want to give them a shout out, is, we were playing kind of rec league ball, and Kenzie was 9 years old, and she was just throwing it past everyone. It wasn't even fair. I played outfield, and I would literally have my glove on my head because I was like, somebody hit me the ball, just because she literally threw it past everyone. So my parents were like, I think she's pretty good. Should we pursue this? And so they had no idea what to do. They didn't know like the club softball circuit. So they just started their own program. And, that was in 2001 that they started this program, and it's still going strong. They still have 8 club teams. My mom is still the president of the organization. They've lost a lot of money doing this. It has not been a financial venture for them. It has been a passion project. But what they're so proud of is the list of girls that have gone on to get scholarships and to get college degrees. And that's kind of what it's been about for them. And my mom is still hooked on trying to get girls placed in her network of coaches, and she has just never let go of trying to help anyone kind of find their path. So it kind of started with Kenzie when they saw that she just kind of had a knack for it, and they were like, maybe we should pursue this a little bit. And they stayed with it, and I think they climbed in too deep and they never found their way out.
Do they listen to your broadcasts religiously? Do they give feedback? What's that like?
Oh yeah, well, like their texts are so different. It's so funny. So like, of course, mom's text will be like, "You were so good. You did the best you've ever done." And I'm like feeling bad about myself. So it's like always that pick me up text that I need. I'm like, "Thanks, mom. Love that." And then my dad will like find one little funny, like witty line that I just slide in, or like one little moment that happens in the game, and he'll like text us about that little moment in the game that like everybody else misses. And it's just like a very dad, just like, "Ha, that was so funny. Like, didn't expect that." So I think they don't miss a game. They don't, whether it's listening or watching, but their texts are always so funny.
And Nate Rohr, my broadcast partner, his go-to thing is always to be, "Who's listening with us? Please check in." And then he'll shout them out on the radio. And what's funny is my dad will never text me that he's listening. He always texts Nate because they're buddies. He'll be like, "Hey, Nate, Lance, checking in."
Gotta get that shout out. I know what he's talking about. I've done that where I've DM'd Nate during the game. "Hey, I'm listening." And then he puts my name out there.
That's right. That's right.
But they can't text the daughter. Yeah, you can't text the daughter because that's unprofessional. You need to text the play-by-play. The guy that's in charge.
Yeah, we don't have enough on our plate. For sure.
The other thing I'm going to say, Eric, too, before we go to a different question is,
Sure.
we're talking about we both played for legendary coaches. I also think it's really cool. I mean, Kenzie went to kind of the powerhouse program, but we both went to one World Series. So we're even in that regard as well.
Well, and what's interesting is you both have a unique perspective in that, Kenzie was part of that 2010 national championship, Arizona's team that got to the championship series, which for a while was the last time Arizona had been to the World Series. That was always the trivia when Arizona had that drought. They haven't been to the World Series since Kenzie Fowler got there. And for you, Mattie, you're kind of in the same boat right now. Nebraska hasn't been to the World Series since you were there. 2013, correct?
2013, yep.
Which obviously I have a feeling that's going to come up a few times this upcoming season. But it is kind of unique. I'm curious, were you there watching the other play at the World Series?
Oh, yeah. I was in high school at the time when she was playing. So, me and my aunts were leading the fan club, leading the cheering section. I went to Kenzie's hotel every morning to braid her hair because once they got on a win streak, we had to do her hair the exact same style. And it was so much fun. There's an ugly photo of me crying when they lost in the championship series, but it was such a fun ride. And our family are super fans. Our family, our cousins, our aunts, our grandparents, they all showed up for that. And then when we went on our World Series run, Kenzie came to super regionals at Oregon, and then she was same thing. She was leading the charge in the cheering section for the Nebraska section. So it was really fun that we got to kind of reciprocate those roles.
Yeah, it was really fun for me because I had just been there 2 years prior. So, it was the first time in a couple years for Nebraska. So I'm like getting all the fans, like, this is how we're going to do this. This is when we're going to cheer. We're not going to sit down. Like, these are the these are the signs that we can bring in as fans. And, so I was making sure everybody was well prepared. And we had a small contingent in Oregon when they upset, what they number ranked second, I think.
Third.
The third. 3 seed, and then the contingent got bigger when it came time for OKC, so that was really fun.
It's pretty good. Wait, so you've been in Oregon? I remember we did this whole thing, Kenzie, when you came on our show to get you to Oregon. Turns out you were in Oregon before.
Well, it was all about broadcasting there.
True. Yeah, all right, fair enough.
Well, and also like it wasn't the renovated, it was the very old field. the field that I played
Oh, you
on.
didn't get. Oh, so it wasn't the new state. Now, okay. All right.
No. Mhm.
Yeah, we upset Oregon hadn't lost at home at all that year in 2013 when we beat
Right.
them. So we got to the World Series and our flag wasn't up yet, and they hadn't printed Nebraska t-shirts yet because it was a total upset that we got there.
Was that the year you played Florida in this wacky, crazy marathon game? I remember watching that game. I mean,
yeah. So I like to say that we're the only team to go 0-3 at the World Series because we lost to Washington in 8 innings, and then we lost to Florida in 15.
15-inning game. I recalled that. That was crazy.
It was a lot of fun.
A lot of marathon drama there. We're speaking with Kenzie Fowler and Mattie Fowler here on In the Circle. I want to ask you, Mattie, what was it like? Because you saw Kenzie, what she had to go through. I mean, there was a lot of hoopla. You're an Arizona pitcher that comes with the territory, for better or for worse. And she dealt with that, good, bad, and different. And, you saw a lot there, what she experienced. And then obviously, unfortunately, her career cut short with the injuries. How did you handle that, being her sister and watching that? And how much of that did you kind of use that when you came to play? It was your turn to play and learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, she went through a ton, and she had already gone through a pretty crazy injury in high school. And so, as her family, we were just hoping she would get back to even close to how she had been before that injury. So, first we were just proud that she got there and she had, but once she was there, she's such a competitor. It was, no one was going to stop her. And the run that she went on, I mean, the amount of innings that she pitched her freshman year was just insane. And that World Series run, I mean, nobody had done that in a long time, where they'd lost the first game and come all the way through the original losers bracket, the old style, before they kind of reinvented it here, to get all the way back to the championship series. And I mean, she just pitched game after game, and it weighs on you when you lose in a championship game, because there's so many, what ifs, this one pitch back, this one pop fly, this one ground ball. I mean, it's just so tough, and you just replay that in your head. And as a pitcher, I think it was something that I really liked about being an infielder, is you don't feel that pressure, or you don't internalize it as much as you do when you're a pitcher and the spotlight is on you. And so then I think it was just hard, because you're always trying to chase that when you get that taste of that your freshman year. But and she had some really tough injuries, and then I got injured as well. So she was always kind of in my pocket too, of the mental recovery. That's a lot harder than just the physical recovery, because you're not as strong or you're not as quick as you were before. There's a lot of just hesitancy that comes with it, a lot of self-doubt that comes with it when you're trying to come back from these tough injuries. And that's just kind of the adversity of being a college athlete. And it's why I think college athletes make very good hires in the workplace, because nobody deals with adversity better. Nobody has, fought through that, or just dealt with those pressure situations and had to come through and been in that spotlight. But it's harder as a pitcher. And I've always admired that about her, how she could kind of take just the force of the world, and especially as the spotlight kid. I mean, she was the it kid in Southern Arizona, and everyone knew her name. And that's really tough to kind of play in that spotlight and deliver like she did.
What about you, Kenzie? What was it like being on the other shoe after everything you went through? Now your sister, it's her turn to play, and she's going through some stuff. What was that like to be on the other side, and what advice did you give her when she was playing and going to Nebraska?
Well, I don't know if we really talked as much as we should have, I think, when we were both in the middle of it, to be honest. I think if you would have asked us now, what we know now, and all, she's talking about the wisdom and the adversity, and, you can give advice now, but I think we were both just on survival mode, because we're only 2 years separate. So she's watching as a high schooler when we're in the World Series. And then, her last 2 years, I was able to go kind of tour the country and follow her a little bit more than I had the previous 2 years. And so by that time, she's an upperclassman, so she's kind of got it figured out. But when she was a freshman and I'm in the middle of my junior year, it's not that we didn't talk a lot. It's just, you're so busy. Like, if you ask any college athlete, you just don't get to talk to your family as much as you want to. It's just how it is. And so we were just kind of both figuring it out, I think, at the same time. And, of course you're going to stay, updated, like, hey, how's it going? Like, how are you doing in your classes? Like, what have you decided your major yet? That type of stuff. it's not the stuff that's on the field, you know. And have you booked your flights for home? You know, what are you going to come home? Okay, cool. Can we get a workout in? I would pitch to her over winter break, and, you know, we'd go outside in our backyard at our parents' house and hit in the cages. And, but you know, it's different now than it was then, because it's just a different animal once you're in it. And, you know, it's always such a bummer. I think about, like, Coach Kendra would always talk about, because he would coach the Olympics, about how the best age is 25 for female athletes. And I am going to be calling Athletes Unlimited, and, you know, we get to watch some of these players play and extend their careers. And, you know, there's just not as much opportunity, you know, in any sport for women as there is for men. And Coach Kendra would always say, like, if I had these players 5 more years, man, like, they would really be able to figure out. And I think it's so true, just because it's the mental that she's talking about. It's not the physical at all. It's just what you go through. And you're young. These kids are, you know, 18 to 22, and, you know, trying to be the best, and everyone's scrutinizing every single thing that they're doing. And it's all about survival. So if you can have a support system that we had growing up with each other and family, and it's everything. But, you know, it was a long time ago.
How much of that, though? No, let's not say that word too often. Now. All right, let's not say that too much. All right. But I am curious, though, because of those experiences, how much of that then has that helped you from a broadcast, as an analyst standpoint? Because part of the roles you both have, you're analyzing what's going on the field and what these players are doing on the field. And it's kind of a unique situation, because if something goes wrong, you have to analyze it, why it went wrong and things like that. But you've been on the other side of it. You've been on that side, both of you, where people criticize or, you know, analyze your game. So how is having that experience, being a player and gone through that, help you from a broadcast standpoint? Is that something that's in the back of your mind, Kenzie?
1000%. And I always try to remind myself to have grace when things aren't going wrong. And especially for pitching, like, it's so hard. Like, I can sit there and go, well, that pitch was down the middle, no wonder it got cranked over, you know. But I don't ever want to say that, you know. So I'm always trying to make sure I choose my words very carefully. And it does matter, you know. I've listened to broadcasts throughout every sport, you know, every division, you name it. And it stands out when the announcer doesn't have grace. You know, these athletes are out there doing the best that they can with the best that they got. And there's no reason for us to demean anyone ever. So being a former player and experiencing the highest of the highs and also experiencing the lows of the lows, I think is so important, because it just keeps things in perspective. And, you know, it's just a game, you know, it really is. It's not life and death. No one's, you know, really accomplishing, you know, life changes here. Like, we're just playing a game for entertainment and for the love of it. So I think about that all the time, though. So that's a great question.
Mattie, your thoughts on that?
I think she hit it right on the head. You know, when she talked about having fun, I think back to Taylor Edwards, who I played with, who's still playing. She'll be up at Athletes Unlimited, I think. She's doing the second session as well. But we used to have, you know, these big powwows, and, you know, everybody's trying to fire each other up, and, you know, and then you'd kind of like, all right, Taylor, what do you got for the team? And she'd always have one message. She'd be like, all right, let's have fun. And she was always that simple. And I mean, that's why she's still playing the game today, because she was always able to simplify it and just be like, this is why we're here. Like, yes, there's a big moment. Yes, there's a lot on the line, but I'm playing today because I'm here to have fun. And that was always something that stuck with me, is here was our All-American, you know, one of the best players that Nebraska's ever had. And that was her message always.
Did coaching ever cross either of your minds to get into coaching? Because that's a natural thing for a lot of players. Obviously, the news, as we talk, obviously our friend Francesca Nea, my broadcast partner for the last 3 seasons, does Florida Gator games as well as UCF games, does national stuff. She is going into coaching as an assistant coach at her alma mater at Florida. Is that something that ever was in the picture for both of you? Is that something that ever thought about? I mean, either one of you, or is that never something you wanted to get into? I mean, that's a natural progression for a lot of players, but you two chose not to. Is that what's your thoughts on that, Kenzie?
Well, I'll let the academic All-American answer this one first, so go for it.
Well, I really like the sports and the business side of athletics. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. So I work in fundraising, oversee, all of our premium seating, our annual giving. And so that's really fun for me because I was a business student, got my master's in business as well. And so I kind of found that niche where I thought I could be successful, where I really have always been kind of a business-minded person, but I also have a love of sport, and I've found a way to marry them together. And that was a home run for me. So that's kind of my passion, is to hopefully continue on that path, be a sport administrator and stay in administration, and always advocate for, for women's sports and for student athletes, and to get them the resources they need. Because at the end of the day, that's why we do this, is we want student athletes to graduate, to be successful, and to have fun competing along the way. So I was always hyper involved as a student athlete, kind of in the leadership groups and everything. So once I figured out that, you could get paid to do that, I was like, yes, please sign me up. So that was kind of why coaching just wasn't in it for me, was because I found the path that I thought could be better suited for, the range of skills that I thought I had.
I thought when I was done, I thought I needed a break from softball. So I was kind of like trying to figure out what I could do to be away from softball, because it's just like, as a 5th-year senior, you're so tired at that point. So I was kind of running away a little bit. I ended up taking an internship at the Pac-12 Network in its 2nd year. So I moved to San Francisco. My husband he's from the Bay Area. So went and lived with his family for a year and commuted all the way in via BART to the Pac-12 headquarters in the Soma district, and had a great time. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, but knew that I wanted to do something with media. My major was journalism with emphasis in broadcast. Thought I wanted to be like an anchor or a sideline reporter. So I'm working behind the scenes. I've always been very good. It's kind of been a weird hobby of mine, of like photography, film, editing, all of that. I've always just kind of been very good at it since I was little. I don't know why. I was always the kid making the highlight videos for our 12U team. Like, I just did. So we have all this great footage because stuff putting together and cutting highlight films as a young kid, not knowing what she was doing. But one thing turns into another, and I'm watching Ashley Adamson and Mike Yam at the Pac-12 Network, and I got really nervous and scared, and I was like, I don't think I can do that. That looks terrifying. And I went on a trip with one of our features producers to cover these volleyball players in Colorado, and we're in the car, and she's talking about, what do you want to do, and asking all these things, and she was like, you should be an analyst. And I was like, what is an analyst? I don't know what that means. And she's like, well, weren't you like an All-American? And I was like, yeah. She's like, well, you like media, right? And you want to be on TV? And I was like, I think so. She's like, you need to go home and get some reps. And I was like, okay, how do I do that? So after that year, I came back home and I met all the right people at Pac-12 Network. And that was the key, is like introducing myself and them seeing my face and having those conversations. Like, this is what I think I want to do. Can you help me? And they're like, yeah, of course. Like, send us your film, go home, get reps, send us your film. And I was like, okay. So then I came back to Tucson and I did like every fall game for the softball team, live streaming. And I did all of the non-conference games for the softball team. And this was my first year out, and then sent it in. Like I said, I was going to package it up. Twitter was kind of starting around then, and I was getting some good tweets from fans. So I was like, maybe I should clip these tweets and put them in there. So I put the tweets together with my footage and sent it in. Didn't hear anything, which is, now I know, not unusual in this business, in this industry. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks before Pac-12 season starts, I get this email like, hey, here, I think it was like 12 games. Can you do them? And I was like on TV? So they were like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I flew to Cal, and my first game was with Troy Clarity, who's still working with the Pac-12 Network and
doing Stanford games, right?
Yep, doing Stanford games. He's a great guy, and I think it might have been his first game too on the Pac-12 Network, but it wasn't his first game as a broadcaster. It was my first game, everything. So did that. Was probably not very good. If you go back and watch it, let's not. But I kind of got those juices going where I was like, I think I like this. And then one thing led to another, and yeah, here we are.
I did not know that part, that you how you got. Who did you seek out for advice, like as far as to learn the craft?
Well, the person that gave me the idea, her name is Annie Gottlieb, and she was our features producer. And then once I kind of got in the right mindset of like what an analyst was, I just, it's like anything. You're a student athlete, you have the work ethic installed in you. I just came home and watched like a million baseball games. Like I just stared and listened to the other guys talk, and I was like, got it, got it, got it. And then of course you like are tuning into like old games. You're listening to Jessica Mendoza, Michelle Smith, and you're just same thing. You're staring it down, you're listening, got it, noted. How, okay, that's how you say that. Okay, that's how you break down pitching. And then you go out there and you try to do it yourself.
Wow. So yeah, because that you were thrown to the wolves, basically.
Oh
It's
yeah,
not like
and it was really hard because I was fresh. That was 1 year out. I didn't even have like a normal summer. It was like you're calling your teammates. It was the girls that I just played with, and I'm calling like I think my third weekend was ASU Arizona, and I was just pitching against this entire lineup. Okay, stay neutral. And it's not like you're on a live stream. We were at like, it was Pac-12 network. So it was fun.
that's amazing, right? And then back then there wasn't as much softball on like there is now, so there was really nowhere to hide. Like people,
No.
like it was people would be noticeable. That's kind of crazy. Now that I think about that, but that's when did you feel comfortable in the booth? Like how long did you feel okay, I figured this out, or I
Probably
now
this year.
had a feeling that answer was coming.
Do
Did we
you
figure
ever
out what year this is yet for you? Have you figured that out?
I figured out it was my 6th postseason with ESPN. So I think it was my 8th year overall, because my first 2 years did not do any postseason work. So my third year, I got postseason
So you
work.
just finished your AC, so you're 2 seasons
Yep.
from being a decade. Mattie, make a note of that. Got to
Noted.
celebrate a big decade note there. But Mattie, if you listen to this, can you imagine if you were kind of thrown in there without any advice or anything, kind of like what Kenzie did when she first started?
Absolutely not. And I kind of shoot from the hip a little bit more than she does, so I probably would have. Somebody would have had to reel me back in. But that's why I was so lucky that, I really didn't have any experience, but I had Nate. I mean, so Nate was here setting me up perfectly and talking me through it. And it was easy for me because I'm only calling Nebraska games. So I can react to Coach Ravel's, what she's saying right now, because I know what she's saying. I played there 5 years. I literally heard every single story. I can tell you what she's going to right now. And I can tell you how the ballpark plays. And, I can tell you what they're preparing for and how the Big Ten plays. So for me, it's always been a little bit easier, I think, because I am just doing Nebraska games. So I just got to know kind of our roster and the Big Ten, field mostly. And versus, if Kenzie, and you're the same way, Eric. I mean, you guys are more like, every single person across the nation. You guys are just so in tune with it. And sometimes it's like halfway through season, I'm like, Kenzie, like, have you heard of it? Kenzie's like, yes, of course I've heard of this girl. Like, where have you been? I'm like, I'm just now getting in the thick of it. I'm just tuning in.
Yeah, man, you have no idea. Some of the text messages me and Kenzie have had during the season, we're just kind of exchanging notes and just talking broadcasting stuff,
Yep.
which is actually some of my favorite stuff, but stuff we can't talk about. Because but we're very similar. Because she is super competitive, right? She's like a lot like me about we want things to go perfectly, which is really unreasonable. That's just not going to happen in broadcasting world. But that's how we are. Are you like that, Mattie, where you kind of want everything to be perfect? Do you not, or do you try to kind of block all that out?
I don't think I am on the broadcasting side. I think it's a passion project for me. So it's very fun. And that's what it's always been. Is I probably could be more prepared sometimes, I'll be honest, but I'm just reacting. But in all other aspects of my life, I am definitely an insane perfectionist.
It is so weird because our personalities, I swear what she's saying, we're exactly flipped. So like when I get on air, I am like how Mattie is in real life. And Maddie's a little bit more like low key, and that's how I am in real life. But I don't know why, but it's just kind of funny that way. She's very like type A, everything has to be planned out, super organized. And I'm just like a little bit more like loosey goosey. I can kind of fly with the plans. It's whatever, unless it's about broadcasting. If it's about broadcasting, I am Mattie Fowler, type A personality about every single thing, every single note. Just so funny.
That is interesting. What attribute, personality, or whatever you wish you had about the other? Like Kenzie, what's one thing you wish you had that Mattie does or has that you think could
As a
help you in the
person or as a broadcaster?
both?
Mm. As
Maybe
a
applies to both.
broadcaster, yeah, as a broadcaster, I always look forward to her defensive analysis. She played every position as an infielder, which I did not. I was pretty much like, 99% pitcher, first base. My dad stuck me at second base a little bit, like in 14U when we didn't have a second baseman to try and like patchwork our team together. But I was pretty much first base pitcher, and she played literally everything except for catcher. So I always love listening to her breaking down defense, and whether she'll say something's very difficult and whether the shortstop needs to be covering. I'm always listening for that because I'm like, I can learn that a little bit better. So I always look forward to that. As a person, that's tough. We are completely different. Not only like I'm the redhead, she's the blonde, academic All-American, just regular academic or regular All-American. So we are just completely different there. She was the brainiac passing me. Not to say that I wasn't a great student. I was a good student, but let's be very clear. We were taking the same math class my junior year in high school. So she was helping me literally pass like algebra and physics. So I just wish I had her brain, to be honest. And it's what she's still doing. She's diving into numbers and helping with fundraising. And I am just not one with the math. And I am always jealous about that. But she's always been able to keep everything so level-headed. And even though that she is, that type A and it's got to have the 4.5 or whatever your GPA was and be the academic All-American, she's still has like those street smarts, and she's still able to have common sense and keeps her life balanced as much as she can. So I would say that all of those things.
It's pretty high praise there, Mattie. Same question to you.
Well, I'm going to answer for myself too, is I think what Kenzie could use a little bit of mine sometimes is my memory. I swear she remembers nothing, Eric. Like I will be like, Kenzie, remember like your sophomore year, like you were going up against this team, and then, this is what we had for lunch that day. And then the girl like hit one, and then, and no, she might as well have not been there. Like she has such a short memory, which I think helped her as a pitcher. I think it's part of her training. Like you had to have a short memory, but I was like, you didn't have to keep that in your life. Like Kenzie, like let's remember some of these good times we had. So that's what I need to lend you some of my
100%. 100%. If I didn't have Mattie, like I swear, like no, I wouldn't know what happened to me in like college and high school. I remember college a little bit better than I do like high school, middle school, but like I don't know what it is. I think it's the trauma thing with being a pitcher. Or maybe my brain just says you've got more important things.
Clearly, no, it has to be. It has to be. I mean, that's always the old saying, right? As a pitcher, you have to have short memory. So I don't think you can just turn that off. Like either you're all in or not, and that's in your DNA.
So but true. On the real side here, I mean, I already said it, the way she can break down pitching, I don't see it like that. And I just wish I was more confident. I'd be like, is that a backdoor curve? Is she throwing a screwball? Like, what is that, Kenzie? And she's like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, right. Yes, I thought that as well. So she just sees it so well, and she can just pick apart a pitcher, and, and she'll be like, well, this girl, everything she throws is off a screwball grip. And I'm like, it is? Right. Yes. I'm thinking just as a hitter and pitch up, cut the ball in half, got to have a nice short swing. So that part of it, I wish I could just steal a little bit of nuggets out of her brain there. On the personality side, as she was saying, I was kind of the math person. She's super artsy. She has chastised me my entire life for my handwriting. So I wish that I could borrow her handwriting, because I have like doctor's chicken scratch, and she always told me I was writing like a fifth grade boy.
A boy, fifth grade boy?
The fifth grade boy.
Still does. Yeah, still does.
How competitive do you two would get as you were growing up, and how competitive you two are? You competitive with each other?
We were more than me for a while, because it was
that's true.
We got closer when we got to high school, but that middle school, when I was in middle school and she was in high school, man, middle school girls are tough. Young high school girls are tough. So we had an era there where we just weren't quite vibing, but I was, I scratched my way back into her friend group and, I'm scrappy. I got back in there.
Well, she was just, it's like those age where you get too cool for things. And she was like just the annoying little sister. And she was still going to middle school and I was going to high school and we had to drop her off first. And she was always so mad because she was going to be late for math. And we thought it was so funny. So we had this big carpool group and, so it was probably not very nice of me when I was a freshman in high school being mean to my little sister. But she was definitely growing up just the more competitive person overall. Like, the stories I could tell you would fill up another podcast with just her antics when she was little. I can't even start to explain how just bananas she was about things, especially on the field. Like, not only just like Monopoly at home or wrestling or whatever. Like, when we were playing on the field, one time she got out at first base and just sat on the base and was like, "You're going to have to physically remove me." And so my dad had to go over and physically pick her up off of first base and carry her off, and snot's coming down her nose and she's screaming, I was safe. And I'm like, oh my God, how embarrassing. This girl's a nightmare. Like, we can't let her play softball. Like, what are we doing? We're just embarrassing ourselves as a family. And she was just like that every single, I think she tripped a girl at shortstop one time and she looks over and goes, well, she was going to score. And we're like, Mattie, you can't think like this. What are we doing? And so she absolutely, hands down, the more competitive one. And I was just always just like, sister, get it together.
What would happen if you two face each other? Like, you're in the circle, she's at the.
You did.
How'd that go?
Well,
we call it a tie.
Okay, this was first tournament, my freshman year, game 2. I have to face Kenzie. We're at the Kajikawa Classic in Arizona, and it's literally game 2 of my college career. And I've got to hit off my sister. I mean, that's pretty cruel right there. You're still trying to figure it out as a freshman. But luckily, I was hitting second in the lineup. So both times our leadoff got off. So I just put down a nice little sack bunt, chalk that one up as a victory. And then the way I tell the story is my third at bat, I hit one warning track. It was almost out. If Kenzie tells it, it was shallow center, but I think it was deep.
You want to respond?
I don't remember any of this.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good. Yes. All right. I forgot. Short memory. So basically, you have the advantage, Mattie. Mattie, you can tell exactly whatever you want. She's not going to remember. How's she going to refute if she doesn't remember?
Yeah, 3 for 3. Actually, I was 3 for 3.
Yeah.
2 doubles.
We're speaking with Kenzie Fowler and Mattie Fowler here on In the Circle. Let's change tunes here a little bit. I want to, obviously, both are very busy people. Be surprisingly not just do softball. Mattie, you mentioned what you do in Nebraska. For those that are not aware, tell the audience what you do at work at Alabama, because you're involved in a lot of important things. Not beyond just softball. You got a big event, obviously volleyball season, which is huge in Nebraska. I would know, I've doing the second year. There's a big event that Nebraska is going to host a volleyball match at a football stadium, which you were behind on that. So just tell us, the audience, for those that don't know, what your role is at Nebraska and some of the things you do.
Yeah, so I work in our development office. So I'm an assistant AD for annual giving, and bottom line is that's fundraising, which for me is really fun because it's an easy story for me to tell donors, because I benefited from that student athlete experience and can tell them exactly, how it changed my life and how their donations directly support student athletes. So that's always been fun for me to kind of make those connections. So I'm working with donors. I'm overseeing our premium seating. So we have, for volleyball, we have suites, we have courtside seats. You don't see that anywhere else. And we have 184, VIP seats at our volleyball games. We obviously, men's basketball, women's basketball, football is king in Nebraska. But yeah, you mentioned we've got really exciting event coming up August 30th, and we're hosting a volleyball game, a regular season game, so it counts, and we're hosting it in our football stadium, and we sold over 90,000 tickets. Those weren't giveaways.
Wow.
They weren't $5. We sold 90,000 tickets, and I think the world record is 92,000, but the American record is just over 90,000. So we've got our sights set on the American record for a women's sporting event, which will be really, really cool. And obviously we'll have that NCAA record locked up, I think for good.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of attention on that. That is going to be historical. Do you get a rush when you do a project like that versus playing on the field? Can that equal that rush that you have as an athlete playing? Is that similar in your work environment where you have?
Yeah, I don't think anything will ever top the rush of, competing. Like there's nothing like standing in the box and your hands are a little sweaty, and just the adrenaline of face to face, facing off against a pitcher. But I miss that, and that's what I love about sports, and that is why I stayed in this business, because I don't think you can replicate that anywhere else. And I just want to be part of a team. I mean, I love working on a college campus because you're surrounded by young people, you're surrounded by energy every day, and it's just really fun for me to any way we can support our teams and help them win on the court and off. I mean, it's an easy thing to really work hard for every single day.
One thing I've noticed from the two of you both have a passion for college athletics. You do different things, you have different roles, but you both have a similar trait. It seems to me you both have a passion for college athletics. You're both around it a lot in various roles. Is that accurate?
100%. And I mean, I'm just gonna brag on Mattie a little bit. If you go out to just there's some tangible things that she's been able to do at Nebraska that are game changers for experience. And if you go out to Bowlin Stadium and you just look down the left sideline, there's the cutest little playground that's on the stadium now. And I'm sure Mattie can just quickly tell the story about what that is. But that was all her, 100% all her, this project getting put in. And I went to, fall ball last year visiting, the young one going to see my nephew, and caught some Nebraska softball fall games. And he wasn't old enough at the time to go play on it. He will be now. But, looking over and seeing all these kids play on this playground while the game's going on and their parents can kind of just watch the game a little bit, it was super heartwarming. So, she's out there getting stuff done.
Yeah. I think that I've heard fall ball tickets in Nebraska might be a little harder to get nowadays, Kenzie. Hopefully, hopefully you're prepared for that.
Yeah, let me talk about Bowlin Stadium while we're on that subject real quick. I mean, for the playground, I just want to give a quick plug because it was for a former teammate of mine who lost her young son tragically. And a friend of hers called me and said, what can we do to honor him? And so I went over to brainstorm with Coach Ravel. And at the same time, we were like, playground. And her son's name was Ace. So we named it Ace's Place and had to raise the money to get the project done. And a lot of alumni stepped up, a lot of, donors and supporters of the softball program, a lot of former football players. She was married to a football player. But it took 3 years because it was in the heart of the pandemic to get that project done. So it was something that was needed at Bowlin Stadium. And her son, she always talked about how bright and happy and excited, and he loved to play. So I think it's a perfect place, to memorialize him in just a tragic situation and trying to, anything to do to kind of for that family and to remember him. But Bowlin Stadium, we got this transfer this off season. You might have heard of her. Her name's Jordy, and there's been a little bit of a excitement around Bowlin Stadium. So our season ticket request list is currently longer than the capacity of our park. So I've been on some fun walks around our stadium with some of our administration, figuring out ways that we can expand seating so that we can sell more tickets and pack that place all season. So it's just really, really exciting. And, Coach Ravel laid that foundation. And then, Jordy being who Jordy is, she's got the buzz. She's the hometown kid. And I just can't wait to see what this team does with her and with all this excitement behind them.
Kenzie, sounds like you might, you're out of luck for a ticket in the fall. You might need to call somebody if you know anybody in Nebraska.
I know. She better save me a seat. Or else I'll just take her seat in the radio and hang out with Nate.
What makes you think she's going to have that seat? I mean, it sounds like that seat could be up for grabs at this point.
Well, we only have 2 media spots in our press box, so we're having to build another area for media because we think there's going to be a little more media coverage as well.
That sounds like your spot, Kenzie. That's code word for that's your spot.
Perfect. I'll have my own table. Thank you very much.
What has that been like, Mattie? What has that been like? Because that, from the day that she announced she was leaving Oklahoma, everybody assumed she was going to Nebraska, but then when it officially happened, just a massive explosion. I had Nate Rohr on the show, and he told me how big this. He said this was the biggest thing he can remember at Nebraska for any female sport in general. I mean, this is like a football level type story. She's obviously notary. What has that been like to be in the middle of that, involved in that? You mentioned some of the seeding situation, a good problem to have, but it is unique. This is the number one story in college softball going into this season.
Yeah, well, the first thing that was really cool to me was how positive all of the reception was about her transferring. I mean, that's kind of a hot topic in college athletics is transfer portal and a lot of negativity around it. But I think Oklahoma fans handled it with grace. And then obviously Husker fans were just coming unglued with excitement. So that was the first thing that was really surprising to me. But I mean, I can't even explain the excitement. I mean, and Jordy has handled it really well, because that could be a little scary almost, with how excited people are and just the pressure that can loom. But for her, it was always a really simple decision. It was simply that she wanted to be home. She wanted to be in her home state. Her brothers, one's in college, one's in high school. She wants to see them play, and she wasn't getting to watch them play at all. She wants to play in front of her family and her friends. And one of the coolest things happened on Friday. Jordy went to Papillion La Vista. We had another pitcher in the early 2000s, Peaches James, who was a stud and kind of set the bar for Nebraska softball. She went head to head with Jenny Finch in the World Series, and they went to the same high school. And the town of Papillion renamed the two streets where the softball field is, one Peaches James Lane and Jordy Bahl Way. And so there was a really cool ceremony. And Coach Revella actually told me that it was in the 2000s when we had to bring in more bleachers because Peaches had taken the program to a new level. And now we're going to have to bring in more seats because of Jordy. So it's really kind of full circle thing that, Jordy grew up watching Peaches, and she really put Nebraska softball back on the map. They'd had a lot of success, in the 80s, but she put them back on the map in the 2000s. And now Jordy's going to kind of pick up that torch and be the next person to keep this going. And I think hopefully it's kind of a generational change, for Nebraska softball. And I'm excited to see the ripple effect.
Yeah, and I feel in a way it's kind of full circle for you, Mattie, because Kenzie, I remember when you were at Arizona as a freshman, that was a big story because you were the hometown girl. You were the hero. And there was, the pressure, the hoopla. It sounds familiar what Jordy's about to go through with Nebraska. Does that ring a bell with you, Kenzie? Because I remember when I first obviously watched, it's like, oh, that's the hometown. Wow, that's the one that stayed home. She's the next great one. She's carrying Arizona softball, et cetera, et cetera. It feels like there's similarities there. Can you relate to that?
I mean, totally. It's just that she's walking in a two-time national champ and is in the peak of her athletic career. So, I mean, it's very cool to watch from afar. And as someone who has played for their hometown, if you have the opportunity to do it and that's what you want and you can embrace that, then there's really no better feeling, to be honest, to look up in the stands and see faces that that are cheering for you, and in a place where you grew up going to games. And like Mattie talked about, I mean, Nebraska's it's a big state, but it's also a very small state. And so for someone to come out the way that she has, just like Peaches James did before her, where you get that national recognition from, small town Nebraska, and you get to go play for the two-time national champs in Oklahoma, and you come back and you're bringing all of this attention with you. But I think it's not just attention. It's just, I don't know, it's next level confidence. Like, she's ready to go. She's at such a good place where maybe that might have been a little bit too much as a freshman, where I can kind of say at times maybe it was a little overwhelming to kind of be the ace and have to be a face. And if you're not ready for that, it can be a little daunting. So I'm just excited because I feel like, just as an outsider, don't know her at all, but I feel like she could not be in a better place, mentally. Of course, physically, we all saw what she was able to do this season, but it just seems like a really natural fit for her. And I'm just excited for my sister to keep it going. That's her alma mater. So there's a lot of pride there that she's gonna, Nebraska's gonna do it right. Like, they're ready. They're just, waiting for the season to get going.
Yeah, and I talked about earlier that, I growing up watching Jenny Finch, right? I was mimicking her pitching motion. I mean, that's little girls in Nebraska right now. If you go around to a little ballpark, all the little pitchers are doing the Jordy Bahl, hand dangling out in front, to stay loose and low to the ground. I mean, that's their idol. That's their hero. So the fact that all of those little girls are now going to get to watch her, play in front of them. I mean, that's what I think is that's what it's all about. And that's really what she wanted to do. And she said that kind of in her statement when she announced it, was she wanted to help grow the game of softball in Nebraska. And if you look at the sport of volleyball in Nebraska, it is untouched. I mean, we are competitive at every single level because our volleyball program has been so good, but it had a ripple effect where Creighton volleyball is good. Hastings volleyball won a national championship, which is at a level down. Our NAIA program won a national championship. It is just so good across the state. We're putting out such talented players, and it started with John Cook and his volleyball program becoming really good. So that's kind of the ripple effect that Nebraska can have, because it is a small enough state where one person can kind of have that influence. So I would just love to see that influence for softball and to get more talent, coming out of the state for softball.
How much media, if any, you had to do, Kenzie, your freshman year at Arizona? You remember?
You're muted.
Oh, sorry guys, my bad. I had to do a lot. I'm looking at myself like, okay, yes, I was talking, but I had to do a lot. I had to do a lot in high school, to be honest. So I was pretty well prepared because it was the same group of media members covering me in high school that covered me in college. But I think that was a big part of maybe why I got into broadcasting. Is I got very comfortable in front of a camera at a very early age. It's nothing like, you can think of like pro sports, but for, a Tucson girl, it was a lot of media. So I got very comfortable with interviews pretty early because I committed when I was 14. So I had committed before I'd even thrown a pitch in high school. So they were ready for some questions game one of my freshman year in high school.
You probably, because there was probably a lot of media that normally wouldn't cover softball, but covered you because of the local girl angle, right? Like they probably got a lot of those things. And the reason I bring that up, because I think Jordy's going to have to deal with that as well. And Mattie, and this is something I brought up with Nate when I had him on the show, and I'll ask you about it. There's a balancing act here. On the one hand, you want her out there. It's promotion. It's great. But on the other hand, she's a human being as well. So there's that balancing act as a university about her best interest in that regard. I mean, I covered her at Oklahoma. She didn't have to do as much media because they had all these players, whether it be Jocelyn Allos and the Tiare Jennings. But here, she's the face. Have you thought about that as someone who has been a student athlete, but at the same time, you're thinking of ideas and work in the university, work with people that are trying to say, hey, how can we make this really big and beneficial to Nebraska? But on the other hand, let's make sure we don't put her in a spot where she's doing too many things. So how do you balance that out?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's always just about the program. It's not, it's not just about Jordy. It's about Nebraska softball. And that's what she wants. She wants to elevate everything for the program. And she's very much been, it's not about me, it's about this team and it's about the state. And, that's what I really love about Nebraskans is, it is a small community. So they'll want to protect their own, and they know they don't want to put that pressure, or they don't want to make somebody uncomfortable. I mean, we just hired a new football coach, this year, and he's out dining downtown in restaurants, and people come up and shake his hand and good to see you, coach. Thanks for being here. But they don't make it weird because they feel like that's their neighbor and that's their guy. And, he's one of us. So that's kind of the Nebraska way. It's that small town feel everywhere you go. I mean, we've got 2 big towns in Nebraska, and outside that, all of your towns are less than 5,000 people. So it is very much always like a neighborhood community feel, which I think always feels safe to people.
Now, Kenzie, because you do national, you don't have to focus on one player like Mattie will have to with Jordy throughout the year doing the home game. But you've covered a lot of big-time pitchers, players. Even most recently, obviously, you've done Montana Fouts games. You've done, obviously, Rachel Garcia. The list is on and on. What advice are you going to give Mattie about that? Covering somebody like a Jordy Bahl, which the casual person, there's going to be people tuning in to Nate and Mattie this year that normally wouldn't tune in, that maybe are not diehard softball fans, but are tuning in because Jordy Bahl is pitching. What advice would you give Mattie from that standpoint?
Oh, just enjoy it, I think. I mean, I remember calling like Rachel Garcia, and I would always have to be like, oh man, this is the last year I get to call Rachel Garcia games, and you miss a player like that. That's not a replaceable player. She just won AUX. She's going to be the favorite for AU in this season, hands down, just with what she was able to do, and was so humble. And Jordy's the same way. And so it's not really, there's no advice. It's such a blessing. How cool that you get to sit there and have a front row VIP seat to a generational talent. Like, it's just such a perk that it's one of my favorite things about being able to broadcast, is be able to be the one to paint the picture for these athletes and these just phenomenal women that we get to kind of help share their story a little bit. And it's a luxury to be closer to a program, because if there is a story that maybe she wants to be shared and maybe wants it told a certain way, you're the one that can help deliver that. And I just absolutely eat up every part of the job. So I just think it's such a fun thing to have, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, Mattie, I was curious, how much do you get to talk to the players and get to know them and tell their story? Because Kenzie has to do that, obviously, from a national standpoint with production meetings. So she will talk to all the coaches, and you get to talk to players from time to time, right? Kenzie, is her request at times, right? So you'll get a chance for that opportunity. Obviously, Nate will do a lot of that because he travels with them, so he has more access from that time and standpoint. You've got a job, but how much do you go into talking to a Nebraska player or a Jordy Bahl and kind of pick their brain a little bit, so you feel comfortable talking about them on the air, kind of like what I do, because I didn't play. So my best way of representing the players by talking to them, telling their story that way. I'm not like Kenzie, who can break down the mechanic stuff. How much do you talk to players as far as part of your preparation?
Yeah, well, what's really cool is as a staff member of the athletic department, we eat in the training table. It's probably the best perk of my job is I get free lunch at the athlete training table every day. So what's really cool as staff is we are eating there, with the student athletes, with the coaches. So during season, I'm over there chatting it up with Coach Miller and Coach Ravel and Coach Sipple, because what else would I be doing? I want to recap the weekend. I want to talk about what's coming up. So get to know some of the players a little bit just through natural run-ins, at lunch. But I did travel with the team one weekend last year, because we went to Arizona and I was not going to miss the trip to Hillenbrand. So I traveled with the team, and I actually brought my kid with me, who he would have been close to 1 at the time, maybe about 10 months old. And that was probably the best icebreaker. And I literally don't think I held him the entire travel trip. The Andrews sisters, Brooke and Billy, they love children. They have, nieces and nephews, and they love babies. So, I mean, every time if I come to games and I don't have Beck, they all run up to me after the game and they're like, Mattie, where's Beck? Is he here today? And if Brooke gets a big hit, she was like, did Beck see it? Did Beck see my big hit? So that was kind of a fun icebreaker for me to get to know some people on the team. But it is fun. And like I said, that's why I work on a college campus, is because you get to be around that energy, and it is so fun.
And by the way, the thing is, she's got a good team coming back, good nucleus back from a regional final. Nebraska and Arizona played last year in Tucson. Nebraska won that game. We won't mention the scores or how that went. I was curious, were you both in Tucson? Give me both of you. Give me the story, starting with you, Mattie, and then you, Kenzie. Tell me the story of that when you two, both your teams played.
Well, we actually had Nate and I had Kenzie hop on the broadcast for an inning or two. And it was funny because Nebraska kind of went on a run during the inning that Kenzie was on the broadcast and had a good rally going. So Kenzie was like, I think I need to hop off this broadcast.
Was it the third inning?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but it's kind of interesting that game, of course, Nebraska was playing Arizona, and I work at the university, and I'm an alum, but 2 of the players for Nebraska I coached as a club coach, Caitlin Neal and Sydney Gray. Caitlin Neal is the right fielder, and Sydney Gray is the third baseman, and both from Arizona. And so, whenever Nebraska is playing, of course, I'm listening to my sister, but I also have a little bit of pride there because I coached both of those players since they were, 13. I was giving Caitlin pitching lessons when she was 11, 12. I was around when Caitlin switched from a righty to a lefty. So They're both going to be seniors. Is that right? They're going to be seniors this year, which is
Yep.
wild to me. So I did coach club for a little bit, and my last team, they're all seniors across the board now, across the country, and that's just crazy to me. So it is fun whenever I get to watch Nebraska, because I get to watch Caitlin and Sydney, and I'm so proud of them. They're just absolutely phenomenal people, first of all, and Caitlin's had some adversity to go through, losing her dad in college, and she's stuck it out, and has both of them have had great careers, and Mattie gets to call their games. So it was a cool little homecoming for them, and for the sisters, and the nephew gets to come home, and Nick's there too. We can't forget about Nick, doing all the creative media. So shout out to Nick. But
Yeah, that's my husband. He also works for Nebraska, so he does kind of similar field of work to Kenzie. So he tagged along on the trip to cover the team as well.
family affair, that's for sure.
So how was that 3-person booth? I'm a little jealous of Nate right now. How did that go?
It was quick. I mean, I was feeling good because it was a good game. And then all of a sudden Nebraska turns on the burners, and I was like, all right, I gotta get off. But it was good. It was, I mean, what was it, an inning and a half, maybe? Yeah. Nate was great. He was a good middleman, so he did a good job.
Were you like prepared for that? Did you just wing it? Like, how did that like even come about? Like, did he ask you before the game? Like, how did this all come
No, we
about?
just winged it. Like, I was standing in the press box on the other side, just watching, and I had some interns there for my real job. I put in quotations, as social media manager. So I was just kind of there taking in the game, and then I look over at my sister, who's sitting in my seat. Very, I let her sit in my seat, and so I look over here and I'm like, "Want me to come on? Like, should I come on? Should we do this? Because when would we ever have the chance to do it?" And I was like, it's kind of now or never, right? And so I slid over and threw on an extra headset that we had, thankfully, just randomly, and off we went.
Wow. I'm blown away. I gotta ask Nate about this.
Yeah,
I
well,
want tape.
I'm sure we'll do. I bet you there's some point where maybe we'll be able to do it again, because I go to Nebraska a lot. So it wasn't the last time I
Maybe Arizona plays Nebraska. You make, it's a home and home. Can we make something happen here? Call it the Fowler Bowl.
Hey, now we're talking.
I've always loved that. Coach Avell always tries to schedule though in your hometown. So, she had 4 Arizona kids on the roster and scheduled that Tucson game, but she had a Houston kid scheduled a Houston game.
Yeah.
She's always made that a priority, which is cool.
Oh, that was a big win too, because that really kind of jump-started their season and in the right direction. And yeah, and unfortunately for Arizona, it was not. But how would I'm curious, and this is so fascinating. If you two prepared, knowing you were going to have part of a 3-person broadcast, how would that go? Would you talk to each other? Would you not talk? Like, how would that go? Because, that's intriguing, because you both have mentioned you have different personalities. How would that go? Would one lead the other? Like, how would that go?
I think I would take the pitching and she would take the defense. Then we could probably share some hitting. I think. Does that answer your question? Or
I just want to make sure you both agree. That's great. All right. I want this to happen. I need this to happen at some point. I don't know how, but we can figure something out.
I've done some play-by-play before, so if I needed to scoot over, I could totally do that. I'm not saying I love being the play-by-play, but I've done it. It's on my resume.
So you two could be like the McEnroes in tennis, where Patrick and John work together. Patrick calls the play-by-play, John the analyst. A little Fowler, like a Fowler, or maybe you two can we do a Fowler alternate broadcast stream?
I think we're more like the Mannings.
Ooh,
I'm definitely Eli. She's Peyton. Yeah. I've always been Eli. But
always been Eli,
there would be some good smack talk involved.
You're giving me ideas here. This could be something we might have to discuss off the air down the road. This is some good idea stuff.
I was gonna say we could do a broadcast with you too. We could just pick a game and do a remote broadcast of a big game that's playing. It'd be an alternate broadcast.
Well, like I said, I just lost Fran, so I'm open to ideas. Orlando's a beautiful city. It's easy to get to. I was bummed out because I remember I was telling Kenzie when Arizona and Nebraska both were in Clearwater. Both teams were in Clearwater this past year. I'm like, wow, finally get to meet Kenzie in person. And I figured you two would be in Clearwater. And then I asked her the week of, hey, when you getting in? And you're like, yeah, I'm not coming.
I know. I'm still kind of kicking myself for that, but it was just the way the work schedule was, and I had games like right up prior to, and it was gonna just be crazy travel for me. So I don't know. I'm so sorry.
I know it was a missed opportunity that both of them were there, and somehow neither of us were. It was gonna be both of us or nothing, though. I mean,
That's what I sensed. It was all or
if she found her
nothing.
way there, I would have found my way there.
Mhm.
Yes. And then, Mattie, I know you're surprised, but Kenzie, in her typical personality, she just told me real quick, like, yeah, no, sorry. Go on.
Straight to the point.
Straight
Yeah.
to the point, and just whatever goes is whatever is gonna go.
That's funny. Now you mentioned, Kenzie, obviously you both grew up watching Caitlin Lowe play, which is kind of wild. What's it like covering her? Someone that you actually grew up watching and playing.
Yeah, it's surreal. You know, I'm watching her kind of grow as a coach, and she's the best to ever do it at what she did. And we got to watch her in prime years. Same thing with Jenny Finch. And she's a blast to have just around the halls of McHale. And anytime I'm out there covering the team, whether it's on the broadcast side or whether it's on the social side for my job at work. So she's a blast to have. And I'm really excited. They've expanded their staff. Things are trending for Arizona. Didn't make the tournament last year, and so there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on like what that rebound looks like. And still very new, and I think the program's just kind of in its infancy of that new era. And so I think that's a really fun thing to be a part of, because for so many years it is what it is. It was the Mike Candrea show, and so all good things come to an end. And who wants to step into those shoes? That's a hard thing to do. It's like taking over for you name it, the list of the legendary coaches of just all time, Mount Rushmore. Like you're stepping
Michigan, same
exactly,
boat,
100%. So it's when the time comes that Coach Ravel ever retires, it's going to be the exact same thing. Like, how do you recreate and self-identify with a new era? And so it's a really fun thing just to kind of observe, but also I'm a little bit involved, and as an alum, as a broadcaster. And Caitlin's great. She knows what she's doing. She has a vision. She is that quiet personality, but she's laser focused on where she wants to go and who she's going to bring with her. And the practices are very similar to how they were run by Coach Candrea, because she is a product of the Candrea, family tree. And so you have that consistency, but you have the youthful energy behind it. And, it's really fun to watch. And I'm excited to see where this program goes the next couple of seasons. But you just can't
hope her players know how much of a stud she was, because
that's true.
Because they're a little more removed from when we were. I mean, she was unbelievable.
Untouchable.
Untouchable. Like, you couldn't throw her out. You couldn't get her out. She could stand in there and hit a home run. Like it was like an art form of how she was as a slap hitter. So I hope they know that their coach was a stud.
Yep. I was like middle, I think I was like 8th grade, maybe freshman year when she was playing. And I remember like we would go home, and Mattie and I are the furthest things from slap hitters, like the furthest things from being fast, number one, and like batting from the left side. But we would just mess around in the backyard and be like, okay, drop a Caitlin Lowe really quick. And we'd try to bounce the ball really high, and then like, pretend to sprint, but we're like jogging. But she was a transcendent player in terms of the slap game and defensive play as well.
That's pretty good. You both are covering different conferences. Obviously, Kenzie, you mostly cover the Pac-12 a lot of times, although you got more national now. So I don't even know. I feel like I'm outdating you now. Like I feel now we could just talk SEC. We talk a lot of different stuff. But obviously, you follow the Pac-12 closely. Mattie, you covering the Big Ten. And what's unique about that is you both are it's kind of a unique situation, because after this year, UCLA will be in the Big Ten. It's as strange as that sounds. Kenzie, are you saving your UCLA notes for Mattie to send in a year from now? Like, I mean, it's kind of unique that your conferences here are going to have this little awkward little exchange coming up here in about a year or two. I
know the conference realignment thing. I can't think about it too much, because I know that it's just gonna, the constant is the change, and something's going down, and it's just a matter of, is your team affected or not? So, are we gonna have Jordy Bahl and UCLA Big Ten championship? Is that a sentence that's going to be, come to fruition here in the next couple of years? So it's gonna be wild. It's gonna be wild not to have UCLA on this side of the country and have them travel around the Big Ten. I know Mattie is incredibly excited because she's like, hey, let's take some donors to LA. So I
just can't wait for UCLA to have to fly all the way to Piscataway, New Jersey. I mean, that's a travel day.
That's a travel day for like you. I remember you being like, oh, we have to go to Rutgers or we have to go to Maryland and it's going to be so far and it's just so much time in the bus and the plane. So yeah.
Yeah, add another 1,500 miles.
I don't know. I just.
What's funny is the closest school is Nebraska. Like we are the next furthest west school in the Big Ten.
What? That's true. Oh my God. See, that's why I can't even think about it because it's just outrageous.
We used to call ourselves the San Diego of the Big Ten, but now we can't call ourselves that because we literally have LA.
Yeah, be careful there. Yeah, you're represented now in California there. That's a good liner. See, I did not think of that. San Diego of the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. Never thought I would put that in Nebraska in the same sentence, but we just did on that regard. That's pretty wild. You obviously going to be covering Jordy Bahl. Kenzie, you're going to be cover Kennedy, Stanford, who's the other big star pitcher. It's kind of funny. You two will get to see arguably the two biggest faces in college softball in the next year.
It's a great point. It's a great point. I mean, and Stanford is maybe going to be better. I know they are very excited about their freshman class and they got a Big Ten transfer who was she freshman of the year, Mattie?
Yes. Player of the year.
Right. That's right. We got Big Ten players coming to the Pac-12. Who better to get the notes from?
They got Taryn.
Yep. So we're just switching back and forth. I get the Big Ten player of the year and then Big Ten gets UCLA.
So really, you two should benefit the most from all this movement with Big Ten, Pac-12. Really, you're just exchanging notes.
Well, sure. If you want to put it that way, you got it. I don't know if anybody's benefiting.
Taryn Kern, U.S. Stanford Cardinal, big time Indiana. That's a big loss for the Hoosiers. That's a big loss for them.
Yeah.
That's what I talked about earlier with. I mean, that's kind of the tough side of the transfer portal is you see people who put their team on the map. And then, but you can't blame somebody for, wanting to go compete for a national championship. That's hard to pass up. So you're not going to fault a kid for that.
Also a hometown.
Yep.
She's from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So similar storyline, exactly the same. You go and you do what you need to do. And then you're like, you know what? I need to go closer to home. And I can do the same thing there.
No, it's a great point. It's a great point. All right, couple last things. We'll let you go. You've both been very kind and entertaining, which is why this has gone long. But Mattie, you're learning now that I like talking for a long time. Kenzie, put on your podcast host hat for a second on the side. I want you to ask Mattie as a podcast host any softball question you want. It could be national topic, could be anything. And then Mattie, you will return the favor.
Okay. If you were in charge of softball, what would you change?
Well, I know your answer.
No, I want your answer. Everybody knows my answer. I vented to Eric about it for 2 hours after the World Series. So we're going to go, what is your answer?
I want the game to be faster. And I have vented to Kenzie about this a lot is why softball has taken off the way it has with ESPN coverage is because it has fit so nicely into that 2-hour time frame. And hitting has gotten too good. So you're seeing 3 to 4 pitchers every single game. And so every time you have that pitching change and the innings are going longer because people are scoring more, these games keep going longer. So I think we need to fight to preserve whatever we can to keep it close to that 2-hour time frame. So there's a lot of things we've kicked around. I mean, there's the pitch clock. We've talked about, players that the hitter can't, leave the box. That could be something where you have to keep your foot in the box, get your sign, just like we did growing up, and then you get back in and you hit and you keep moving. Faster time between outs and get back in the circle. So whatever we can do to kind of minimize any of that extra time, because there's going to be those pitching transitions. I want the game to stay fast because I think that's what's drawn so many fans to the game.
Can I ask you, Mattie, what's your thoughts on illegal pitches?
Kenzie has influenced me, so I will say whatever she says. So get rid of the crow hop.
Mattie was crying in the stands as a little middle schooler in the
I
World
was.
Series game 1.
I tweeted when all of the World Series, legal pitches were going on. I said I would like some respect for being the sibling of Kenzie when she was targeted, and I was just a little kid crying in the stands.
We did do a podcast. Kenzie did vent about the illegal pitch, and we made progress, Kenzie. We're making progress. They've made adjustments to it, so I think we're heading in that direction.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. If I was in charge, and I've said this before, but if I was in charge of our sport, I would try to do my best. I know it's sometimes hard with the different levels, but if you go to high school and if you go to different types of club, like, I don't know, organizations, and then you have junior college, and then you have college, and even little league, like this weekend, rules are different everywhere. Why? And that's just confusing. And it's not setting the young girls up because they don't know what they're walking into. And like, is there a double base? Is there not a double base? Can we bat everyone? Can we not bat everyone? Can we step back in high school, or does our foot need to be planted? So I understand, like, you can utilize like high school clearly right now is being used as the experimental area, because now they're allowing the leaping that just got put in for the next calendar year for the upcoming season. So but nowhere else, right? So I think maybe a couple clubs, like maybe, I don't know if it's PGF or ASA or Triple Crown, or you go down the list of which ones allow it but which ones don't. But my point is, it's not the same across the board. So that's always been my thing, is like, why don't we have just easy, simple rules from the highest level to the lowest level? And so
I have another answer too. I would like to answer again. My other rule change that I would like to see is not as many regional matchups for postseason. I'm so tired of programs just being punished because there's another powerhouse school.
You mean like Nebraska going to Stillwater 2 years in a row?
Not even Nebraska, but like Wichita State. They were a really good ball club, and I don't know that they deserved to go to Oklahoma State. And I mean, UCF, you see that consistently, that they get, put in a really tough, situation again and again and again. No matter what Florida seed is, they seem to go there. So it doesn't matter kind of what they do. So I know there are some reasons for that, but I think with the way our sport has grown, that we can go to more of a ranked seeding and not the regional seeding.
It'll be interesting if softball goes the route that volleyball did, Mattie, with last year. They did 32 seeds as an experimental thing and kind of got rid of some of that regional that you're talking about a little bit. I heard it went very successful for volleyball and soccer. I haven't heard officially if they're sticking with that for this upcoming fall or not. I'm waiting to hear from softball if we're going to go in that route for this upcoming season, or we're going to drag our feet onto that. Who knows?
It'd be really exciting.
That would be great if they could go up to 32 and seed 32, because that puts pressure there. That could eliminate some of the regional stuff that you're talking about. I agree with that. I didn't get a chance to allow you to ask your sister Kenzie a question, so go ahead, ask her a question, but you can't ask her about changing what will you change about the game, because she already answered that.
I was just gonna say, I don't have anything else left on this podcast.
Who's your dark horse for this season? Who maybe wasn't?
Oh my God! Wow.
Wasn't in the final 8 or anything last year, but you think is gonna?
Wow. Let me see where Elena Vaughter ends up, and Kelly Maxwell, and then let me talk, because I have some answers, but those are two arms that are going to change the landscape of how things are shaping up. So I will let you know when those two land.
Fine, I'll accept that for now.
Okay. In her defense, she's got like a couple of some broadcasts coming up that she's preparing.
I know. I'm like all in the little league zone right now. We're talking about Indiana, and let me look at my list. We've got Ohio and Missouri. Nebraska is still alive. So
we got a good team.
Yeah, they play Kentucky. Or they played Kentucky?
I'm gonna send you some clips on the Nebraska pitcher, because she's been all over my feed.
All right.
She's got a good little rise ball.
They've got to fight their way through the losers bracket, so they've got a couple games ahead of them.
I love this. You're following the tournament. You have to, obviously, as a broadcaster, but you're following every result as you wait to go out. Oh, look at that. Notes. Look at that. That's what it, see, Mattie, that's what it's about. Get those notes. Prep starts early.
Reactions.
And then we're going from Little League, and then we're going to the highest level. We're going to AU. We're going to Athletes Unlimited. So that's going to be a really fun swing.
I know. I feel like you two would have enjoyed playing in an Athletes Unlimited. You would have been teammates. You could have been opponents.
There's so much to love about that league. I think, there's the way it's self-driven, number one, and how, these women are really help making the decisions and how things are run. But just the point system is so cool. I just think it's so unique, and I'm really excited to get a close look at it. I've watched it since it, started in 2020, and it's only gotten better. And it's allowed us to continue to watch, the Rachel Garcias, the Deja Molipolas, the Taylor Edwards. Like, we get to continue to watch those players. We get to benefit. Thank you very much. So I'm stoked to be a part of that.
And we look forward to watching you there. Well, tell the audience again, you'll be Little League softball Friday. And then the following weekend, Athletes Unlimited.
Yeah, so there's a big slate Friday. It'll be all over ESPN. So I think there's 6 games in a row. Little League softball regional championships all day Friday. And then following week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for Athletes Unlimited. That'll be Series 2. So we will already have Series 1, which starts this week. And so we'll kind of have a little bit of a feeler as to who's going to be captains for week 2 and start to figure out the leaderboard. And, you get to see some rookies play pro, like Kat Sandercock and Megan Faramo. We're going to watch them. And Megan Faramo has already made her pro debut with AUX, but it's the debut of, players like Kat Sandercock. So that's awesome. We get to continue to watch those talent continue to get better.
Yeah, my girl Taylor Edwards, it's her 10th year in the pros, which is pretty cool.
Ooh,
that's amazing. That is amazing. 10 years. Wow.
Uh-oh. So the big question, Mattie, is when Taylor Edwards is at the plate, will Kenzie bring up the fact that she played with you?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh, there it is, material.
100%. That's the easy sister shout out. You better believe it. She won't have to ask for that one.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Mattie, what do you want? Clean it up. Served it up. Now you know it's on record. It's on record. Be on the lookout for it. What do you want to promote, Mattie? I'm going to give you the platform. Promote what you want here.
Well, I'm going to promote Volleyball Day in Nebraska. I think it's going to be the biggest story. So it'll be on TV, so people can tune in and watch that game and just pay attention. I mean, 90,000 at a women's sporting event doesn't happen every day. So August 30th, 7 p.m. Central Time. It'll be a real spectacle. It's going to be really, really cool.
That is right up there. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say that. Yeah.
I think Big Ten is covering it live. I don't know if anyone else.
Big Ten Network probably will. Yeah. That makes sense.
But I think it's something that'll be, on SportsCenter that night. And
everybody will.
Ton of national media are flying in to cover the event. So we're having to set up our media tables just like a football game because we're going to have that much media here. So it'll be really cool.
That's extraordinary because, I mean, that's right up there with like the Rose Bowl when the U.S. women's won the World Cup in '99. And that was a huge event. I mean, that's got to be right up there.
I think that's the record we're trying to break.
Yeah. No, that's a heck of a work. That's awesome. I will be watching that. I do volleyball in the fall on the side. Cool. I have to tune out softball, although I will text Kenzie from time to time from volleyball and say, hey, what did I miss softball-wise? But, no, that's awesome. Congrats on that. I know it's a lot of work into it. That's a cool idea and concept that I have a feeling the only negative is you now know, with that being successful, people are going to try to copy it now.
They can try.
All right. On that note, we're going to end it. That is Mattie Fowler, Kenzie Fowler, the Fowler sisters. This feels like we have a potential here for potential podcast ideas down the road, but we'll discuss that down the road. Ladies, I know it's been a long chat, but honestly, I wouldn't have rather talked to 2 other sisters than you two. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedules with your lives and your families. And Kenzie, we'll look forward to seeing you on ESPN the next couple of weeks. Mattie, we'll see you in the projects, and we'll listen to you all before you know it, before the season gets around.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us, Eric.
Thanks, Eric. I mean, I don't know if there's another time where we have ever done something like this before. So thanks for giving us the platform. And, I feel like there's a lot that we didn't touch on. So maybe we'll have to do this again.
A sequel. See? It's called a sequel. See, that's the beauty of the podcast, Kenzie. You don't want to give it away all at once.
That's right. We've got more. So yeah, sequel down the road for sure.
All right, ladies. Thank you.